Welcome back, crew. If you're following the TTRPG community, you're probably getting beaten to death with people talking about D&D 5e's new open game license and what that means to the gaming space. Now, don't worry, we're not going to go into that here. But one of the cool things, the silver linings I've seen out of all this craziness, is it has a lot of 5e players talking about switching and learning new systems, which I think is nothing but good for the industry. Because 5e's always been the juggernaut in the room, sometimes getting players into the hobby, but a lot of times I felt like it was sucking the air out of the hobby itself and just kind of stealing a lot of the oxygen. So it's gonna be cool now with hopefully people excited, if not excited, at least willing to try out some new systems and branch out to the wide world of TTRPGs beyond 5e, which is a kind of a big mission for this channel. So today, what I wanted to do was rather than talk about our game of the month, which is Pathfinder, we'll get into that later. I wanted to go over just some tips and tricks for learning new TTRPGs. With this channel, one of the big things we've done is I think we've done 8 or 9 of them so far, different games of the month, and that requires me to kind of go through and learn a new TTRPG quickly and make the videos as well as be ready to run it for our live play game of the month. And I think it gave me some cool tips and tricks. And I wasn't a 5e player, but I was a 3-5 player to begin with, and I think some cool things that can kind of help people transition, at least feel comfortable picking up new TTRPGs and bringing them to the table. So hopefully, after hearing this, if you're somebody that's just played 5e before, you'll feel a little bit more comfortable jumping around. And even for other TTRPG players, if you maybe started with another system or just played one system for so long, you just are not as comfortable switching to a new one, this might give you that itch to go and play some of the wider world because there's just so many TTRPGs out. As I was getting ready for my game of the month for January, I was just looking through all the things out there, and there's just so many ones out and so many cool ones, and I feel like it's just the best time to get out there and play some new stuff. And if it takes for this craziness to make that happen, hey, always got to find the good. But if you're a 5e player making that transition, one of the biggest things I will say to you, and I think a lot of times people will I think it's going to be like the same hurdle as learning 5es to learning new systems, but your first TTRPG will always be your hardest to learn. You've learned how to RP, you've learned some of the flow and cadence of a RPG when you learn 5e. So transitioning to a new one is going to be much easier. It's just kind of picking up the mechanics, and kind of how the mechanics with the new system interact with the RP. But you know how it works. You know just kind of the feel of a game and a feel of a session at the table. So now that you know that, you really just have to pick up the mechanics and pick up what their mechanics, the story the mechanics are telling for the system. So like really, it's not as hard as that first one. That first one is everything's new. You're just getting used to rolling dice and adding modifiers and all the craziness. But with this, it's just picking up a new system and figuring out how the rules work and how to kind of express the flavor of the game. So truly, it's not that big of a hurdle. With you already having probably a keener eye than you did when you first started for mechanics, it'll be easier to pick up and won't be the same learning curve as it was the first time. And I'll say a little caveat for 95% of the systems you pick up. I know one of the big things with Pathfinder, a lot of people say is it's so much more complicated than 5e. If you played 5e for some time, you understand the mechanics, you'll be easily able to go through and read Pathfinder and pick up what they want you to do and how they want you to interact with the system, and you'll be able to pick up and play. And that kind of leads into one of my second points. And this is probably there's 2 points when I was going through my notes, and I thought that would be the biggest things. And this was kind of tied between. I think this is number one, but definitely if you're going from 5e to a new tabletop RPG, remember your first time playing 5e. Remember how you didn't let the rules get in the way. The first few times you're playing a system, don't let trying to be perfect with the rules get in the way of having fun. Because you're going to mess up rules. If you've watched my games of the month with me playing some of the new systems, I've messed up rules before, especially at Savage Worlds. I got a couple rulings on that one wrong, probably more than a couple. But no, my players had a good time. I had a good time. You just kind of roll through it, and if you're the game master, even if you're a player, actually, this is the whole table. Make a note of something you weren't sure of, and if you have time as you're going through it, look it up and get that correct ruling. But if you don't have that time, just make a note of it, come back to it, and figure it out. Don't let the rules get in the way of the fun. Now, that's not to say don't just completely do your own thing. Try to have a good idea of the system's rules, but if it gets to something that's kind of like causing too much momentum to be lost, or just one of those moments where you're like, you don't want to throw off the momentum, just kind of make a ruling, come back to it, and see what the actual gameplay rule is, and then kind of compare the mechanics. Maybe you like your way a little bit better. Maybe the rules as written way is the best way to go. But truly, just go into it to have fun. You're gonna mess up rules sometimes, especially if it's your first time playing the system, and that's okay. And if you're a new player at a table with experienced players, that's definitely cool too, to ask some questions. Definitely do a little bit of research on your own, because sometimes if a new player comes to the table without having looked up anything, that can be a bit annoying. But if you've done your due diligence and just have a few questions as you're coming through and playing the game, most experienced players I've seen should be more than happy to kind of fill in the blanks for you and say, oh, this is how that mechanic works, or oh, you do this and that for that. And experienced players definitely be open to having that at the table, because yeah, it's just getting into a new system can be just a little bit anxiety ridden, especially if it's your first time learning a new system or playing with a new table. So just be as open as you can to having fun and kind of going through the experiences as they come up. So that's definitely probably the biggest piece I'll give on that one. But after that, we're going to go into one of my favorite pieces of advice for learning a new RPG. And if you've watched my videos before, you'll see each time I do a game of the month and pick up a new system. This is after our first impressions. This is the first thing we do, building a PC. Whenever you go through and build a player character with the system, it allows you to see what the system values, and going through that process lets you learn mechanics of the system. Because usually if you read something, you're like, oh, how does that work? And if you should, and actually maybe you don't do that now, but if you come across something as you're building that player character, go look it up. Kind of mark your spot and then go and try to find in the book where it says how to do that. Because if you do that, kind of do the back and forth through that as you're building a character and looking up all the different mechanics, by the time you get done, you're going to know a good bit about the system. With each of the systems I've done, building the character is what made me feel confident enough to run it or to do the mechanics videos right afterwards. If you ever want to go look at a pattern, it's always PC build and then mechanics, because it allows me to do a lot less work when I'm doing the mechanics videos, because I've looked up a lot of the things while building my PC. The other thing I'm going to add to this too, and this one may be a little bit more controversial, but build your first character by hand. Now, one of if you go back to the Lancer video comments, when I build my Lancer PC, a lot of people are like, oh, why didn't you use CompCon, or which is like their D&D Beyond software for anybody that's from 5e. I say this even to new people playing 5e and using D&D Beyond or the Roll20 character mancer. If you use the automated system to build a PC, you learn so much less. It takes something out of the learning process, and for somebody who's experienced and finds that way quicker, go for it. That may be the best way that works for you. But for a brand new player, go through. It doesn't have to be like by hand. Just do it manually. Like I always build mine on Roll20. I hate my handwriting, so even if I do type, I have a character sheet, I type it up in a fill-in PDF. But yeah, just go through it step by step by step, and for a lot of RPGs, and you'll find this too if you came from 5e, like another shout out to Lancer. They've got a really good step to build your PC, and it's so much easier because usually a lot of the other TTRPGs will have their character build options on one page versus D&D 5e where it's like six. That's not to slam 5e, but it's just one of the things I really noticed when I kind of came out and started playing more RPGs. It's just how easy it is when you have one page to look at and you can go step by step by step. Because Lancer had that, Savage Worlds had that. I think Blades in the Dark had it. But yeah, definitely Lancer's Savage Worlds. It's just really one of those cool things you can go through and reference. But seriously, if there's one thing you take away from this video, definitely make sure to go through and build your first PC by hand. It just really teaches you a system and just makes you more comfortable, or at least in my opinion, it'll make you more comfortable when you come to the table with that PC, because you're hopefully going to understand all those interactions and what you can do. The other thing I'll add to it, this is kind of like a point A for that, don't build the first class you saw that you liked. Or don't go right into it. And if you do, when you do it, kind of go through and look and read some of the other classes too before you build it. Because a lot of times just reading the other classes, like for Pathfinder, for instance, if you wanted to build a champion, take a look at the wizard, take a look at the rogue, because you get to see a lot of different mechanics from different aspects of it. So like for spellcasters or the wizard, you can see how those interact. You can see how the marshals work. And for even classes that don't have that same, or games that don't have that same type of class distinction or build distinction, it just lets you show how different parts of it interact. And it really just makes sure you can build the best PC you want, because you can see how the different mechanics line up. So, those are a couple of my big ones. Another one I'll add in there too is when you are kind of going to a new system and kind of trying to figure out the ropes of it. Google. Google will be your best friend. Reddit in particular. If you have a question, there's likely 10 other people had that same question. And you can go through Reddit. And sometimes you may get like a lift or sift through misinformation, but a lot of times you can find the answer. And the nice thing too is most of the TTRPGs have subreddits. So I always post my videos on the various subreddits, but you can also go to those subreddits too to find those, either if you find those answers or find answers to the questions you have, or post those questions directly. And the communities are usually super welcoming from what I've seen. I'd be more than happy to walk you through it and kind of get you that correct answer, just so you can know exactly how to get that build right or get that mechanic right, or how this ruling would work for the system. The other big thing I would say too for 5e players coming over is kind of embrace the other systems. I've seen a lot of times with 5e players, and especially usually more in the DMC, and this is something I've been guilty of doing too. Don't try to run every game like 5e, especially when that's a system that you're most comfortable with, or most comfortable running or playing with. It's just natural to kind of go back, try to move other systems back into your comfort zone. But just try to embrace the system as much as you can, rules as written, as you're getting those first few plays and the first few runs in. Because a lot of times they may have some things that may surprise you with them. And especially embracing them where they're at will just get you a better experience. And it may not always be the system for you, but at least you'll kind of know exactly what they do and how you kind of fit with that system. So truly just run them how they're at and just kind of really try to embrace what the system's going for. The last big thing I'll say before we wrap it up on this side, just another tip for 5e players coming over. This is the time to embrace the genre that you've tried to bend 5e into. Myself included, I know a lot of people who've played 5e a lot have broken it, brought tons of homebrew rules in, try to fit it into genres it may not fit into. But going through and exploring new TTRPGs is the time to experiment. If you've tried to do a mystery and didn't like the way 5e handled it, or tried to do a heist and didn't like the way 5e did it, check out some of those other systems and see what they can do for you. Like for some of the ones we've played, if you wanted to do a heist, do Blades. If you wanted to have crazy mech combat, do Lancer. If you wanted a different alternative on Fantasy Blade, check out Pathfinder. There's so many different things out there, just systems out there, that you can pretty much find something that fits exactly the mold you want it in, that can be easy to pick up. So really try that out. Just look around, especially if you're just saying, hey, I'm done with 5e. I want to see what's out there. Take some time to explore the nets. Check out the same with self-promotion. Check out some of my old videos. We've got about, I think, 7 or 8 games of the month out there that we go through and break them down pretty extensively. And you can see if they fit the genres that you're looking for. Because this is kind of your time to find that new system and kind of make it, either make it your home or just start kind of broadening your repertoire of what you can run. So embrace it, try out those genres, Google kind of for the different genres what RPGs fit best, and you can even find some cool options that you may not have even thought of before. So check that out and just really kind of embrace the world. But hope you guys enjoyed that. That was just a quick run through of just some of the tips I had for learning a new TTRPG after kind of running this channel for a little under a year now. So check those out. And if you're new to the channel, like, subscribe. Each month we pick up a new tabletop RPG and we go through how to play it, how to build a PC, and then we do a live actual play of the game and raffle off a copy of the PDF of this system. So if you're interested in that, join us January 26th, this Thursday, or that Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to be running Pathfinder. With all the open game license and seeing Paizo come up so much, I had a little bit of an itch to run Pathfinder. So join us for that and get your chance to win a copy of the PDF. And then join us each month afterwards for new games of the month and videos like this going on how to participate in the TTRPG community. But thanks everybody for your time. Drop a like, subscribe, and until next time.